Welcome everyone to our webinar today. This is our first webinar this year in our series on evidence-based approaches to tobacco control in Africa, hosted by Development Gateway and the Center for the Studies for the Economies of Africa under the Tobacco Control Data Initiative. Tobacco industry interference is the single biggest challenge to adoption and implementation of tobacco control policies in Africa. And so we're here today to talk about how we can strengthen regulation to deal with tobacco industry interference. And we will be looking at how we can build our capacity as tobacco control stakeholders to counter industry interference, drawing on lessons from the Global Tobacco Industry Interference Index 2025. And so we have a list of 5 speakers, and we will look at perspectives from the African region and then narrow down to Zambia and Ethiopia with a view to understanding the tobacco industry interference tactics, sharing country experiences and best practice, and proposing actionable policy and regulatory responses. So these are the speakers that we have for today. So I'm Rachel Kitonyo-Devotsu. I'm your moderator. I work with the Tobacco Control Data Initiative. We have 2 speakers from Ethiopia. We have Mr. Aklilu Getinet, who's a Deputy Director and Program Lead from Health Development and Anti-Malaria Association, HDAMA, and they do the Tobacco Industry Interference Index for Ethiopia. He has over 20 years experience in the public health field. Our second speaker from Ethiopia will be Mrs. Bitsat Shimeles, and she works with the Ethiopian Food and Drug Authority, EFDA, in the Drugs, Precursor Chemicals and Tobacco Control Unit as an expert. Next, we will have 2 speakers from Zambia. We're going to start off with Professor Faston Goma, who's a professor of physiology and cardiovascular health, and also the Center for Primary Care Research in Zambia. He'll be followed by Dr. Chrispine Sichone, who's a public health consultant and the tobacco control focal person at the Ministry of Health in Zambia. And then we'll also have Mr. Deowan Mohee. He is the executive, He is the executive coordination and technical support expert at the African Tobacco Control Alliance, ATCA, based in Lomé, Togo. So welcome to our webinar. Before I invite the speakers, please note that we have got the chat function and a question and answer function. And so as each speaker is speaking, feel free to post your questions or comments there. And at the end of all the speakers, we'll have between 15 to 20 minutes for a panel discussion. And so as you post your question, please indicate which speaker you would like to answer your question. Let us jump right in. I would like to welcome Mr. Deowan Mohee, and let me stop sharing as I share his slides.
Thank you, Madam. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I have been asked to speak about the index, first of all, about the regional status of the tobacco industry interference, in Africa. And I believe that the best document on which we can base ourselves to have a clear picture of what is going on in Africa with regard to tobacco industry interference is the 225 Africa Tobacco Industry Interference Index. So next slide, please. And this is this report is carried out every 2 years, and it is one of the major works of the Global Center for Good Governance in Tobacco Control. And in Africa, this assessment. This survey is carried out by GGTC in collaboration with ATCA, which means that we were very closely involved in conducting the 235 index. And 20 countries participated in this report survey, 12 Anglophone and 8 Francophone. What is important to note is that this is a civil society report. It is driven by civil society. All the stages are taken care by civil society. In the 20 countries, ATCA has got its country partners, CSO partners, and they are the one who takes the lead in conducting the survey in these countries. And at no point government is involved. At times they are consulted on certain issues, but this is mostly a civil society report. And in other words, being given that we're speaking about interference of the tobacco industry. In other words, the report is concerned with the implementation of Article 5.3 and its guidelines. So next slide, please. So we, in the report, we have used 5 indicators to measure how the tobacco industry is interfering in tobacco control in Africa. So these are the 5 indicators. I won't go into details. The 7 indicators, and we are just going to the next slide, and we are going to address each of these indicators separately, a bit more in detail. So when we come to the next slide, please. When we come to the indicator about the tobacco industry participation in policy development, what we find is that out of the 20 countries that were involved in the index, we find that the level of interference of the tobacco industry was high in several countries. We are just mentioning a few over here: Republic of Congo, Malawi, Nigeria, Tanzania, and Zambia. Okay. What we see here also out of these countries, quite a number of them, 3 of them, they are major tobacco producing countries in Africa. And the lowest level of tobacco industry interference was mostly in Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Chad, Senegal, and Mauritius. And just a few examples of how tobacco industry interferes in policy development. I just want to say, when we're speaking about policy development, for those who, just to clarify a bit, we mean that the tobacco industry participates, gets involved in drafting of laws, of legislation, either by participating directly in meetings that are being organized by competent government ministries, or by submitting policy proposals to the government consideration. So this is what we mean by policy development. So in Malawi, as we can see here, at the Conference of Parties in COP10, the Ministry of Agriculture participated in that conference, and this ministry is very closely linked to the tobacco industry. I mean, protecting the interests of the tobacco industry. And in Zambia, the tobacco control bill is awaiting adoption for many, many years now, and it has been reviewed on several occasions and postponed. And fortunately, now the bill has been tabled in Parliament in December 235, and hopefully, let's hope that in the years to come. In 226, we could expect the adoption of the bill, unless again there is a strong tobacco industry interference and there will be another delay. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of CSR activities, the report notes high level of CSR activities in several countries. Some of them are mentioned here: Gabon, Madagascar, Nigeria. Also, we have to point out that there are quite a number of African countries that have got legislation banning CSR activities. Also, quite often, it is not implemented. For example, in Mauritius, we have got it, but fortunately in Mauritius, the CSR provision in the law is 100% effective. But for example, we have got, for example, Nigeria. You have got the tobacco industry participating together with government in fish farming and borehole installation initiatives. In Madagascar, it's participating in sustainable development together with the government. But in countries like Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, and Chad, there is no report of support from government for CSR activities. Next slide, please. So benefits to the tobacco industry. When we're speaking of benefits, as pointed out in my slide, we are mostly speaking about the government giving tax exemptions to the tobacco industry, or limiting tax increases during the budget exercise, or extending deadlines. And this is very often the case in Africa, extending the deadlines for the implementation of health warnings or plain packaging. So all 20 countries, the report notes that all 20 countries have provided benefits to the tobacco industry. Also, not in the same measure. Some have provided significant benefits, others quite little less. So here are a few examples. For example, in Kenya, the amendment, which is supposed to regulate smokeless nicotine products, has been delayed. And in Cote d'Ivoire, where ATCA is actively engaged, there is a long delay in the implementation of the health warnings and plain packaging. It has our understanding is that it has been postponed again. The lobby of the tobacco industry is so strong, and they are requesting another delay of 6 months in order to go ahead with the implementation of the plain packaging and health warnings. In Gabon, as you can see, the tax has been postponed for an additional 6 years after a 4-year delay. So there has been a delay of 10 years, and now they have asked for an additional time for implementing the tax. And duty-free allowances, this is quite common in Africa, in most countries. Next slide, please. We come to...
One more minute, Deowan.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, okay. So unnecessary interaction with the tobacco industry. So what it means is that government officials, they attend social events organized by the tobacco industry, trying to foster ties or building partnerships or accepting assistance from the tobacco industry. So all these partnership assistance initiatives, of course, they create opportunities for the tobacco industry to interact with government officials. So many instances have been noted, and the highest interactions were in Malawi, Zambia, and Madagascar. Very little interaction in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, and Mauritius, and Ethiopia and Gabon and Uganda. They have got strong legislative action to protect public health from the interference of the tobacco industry, which is very good news for Africa. And if we look at now, we go to the examples, a few examples. Last slide. Unless we are short of time, we can move. So
We are short of time. Could you
okay,
be winding up?
Okay, just good. Okay, so for the next indicator, the conflict of interest. Here we are mostly speaking about when there are concern about the objectivity of actions or decision making of persons. So here, the law in Botswana, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Uganda, it prohibits the tobacco industry to contribute to political parties. And here we have given some examples to you how there is conflict of interest in Malawi because politicians have got tobacco farms, and obviously they won't side when there is any policy regarding tobacco industry, tobacco farming. And regarding preventive measures, these are it concerns mostly about governments protecting how governments protect tobacco control policies from the tobacco industry. So the index has been looking at how government discloses interaction, whether there is a code of conduct for public officials, whether there are periodic submissions of activity and things like this. We find that only two countries in Africa have, Chad and Ethiopia, have all these preventive measures, and many countries, as listed here, they have none of these preventive measures. But even in countries that have got these preventive measures to protect from the tobacco industry interference, the challenge remains implementation. Implementation is weak, and it creates a lot of problem for tobacco control. So these are the tactics that are used. It's a brief of what we have seen in my presentation. But these tactics are not just for Africa. They are global. In all the countries, it's the same. If legislation is poor, if our political class is lenient. So these are the tactics that we find. We just go to the previous slide. Just one small comment. But what you see in bold, these are the emerging, the new tactics of the tobacco industry, which we didn't find in the past. For example, the harm reduction narrative is quite new with the advent of the new tobacco products like e-cigarettes, heated tobacco products. So this is very common now. You will see it everywhere, the tobacco industry speaking about it, promoting its new products. And then social media marketing, this again, it's a very visible even in Africa, using social media to market and contribution to the health sector. It has always existed, but COVID-19 has indicated to what extent the tobacco industry can go in. So, implication for public health when the tobacco industry interferes with tobacco control is we delay the implementation of the WHO FCTC and we the new the novel tobacco products they are spreading in Africa at a very fast rate. Our population gets more and more vulnerable, especially young people, and the tobacco industry continue to be the key vector for the spread of the tobacco epidemic.
Sorry, Deowan, we've run out of time.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, my dear. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to your recommendations during the panel discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, allow me to share the next speaker. So our next speaker is going to be Mr. Professor Goma from Zambia, and he will be sharing. A minute.
Please, Richard, remember to put it on full screen.
I am trying to do that. All right. So our next speaker is from Zambia, Professor Faston Goma. Take it over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. And good afternoon, colleagues. I'm sure most of us are in the afternoon. And here, I'm privileged to present the report from Zambia. Now, I am from the Center for Primary Care Research, and I must say we are not the ones who did the tobacco industry interference index, but we would really want to acknowledge that the report reflects the truth about Zambia. Now, looking at what has been obtaining in Zambia, we have seen that, over the last 4 years, Zambia has been rated to be among the bottom 10 poorest performers on the world index. And I think in all the years, we have been really trying to see what changes. But so far, not much is changing, which is very, very unfortunate. In 2025, on the 2025 index, we came out with a score of 83, which shows very, very high interference. But as I said, 2020, 2021, and 2023, we also featured among the bottom 10. But it's encouraging to see some African countries coming up. I think one to note here is Malawi, of course, that is overtaking Zambia in its control over the tobacco industry. Next slide, please. So looking at the tobacco interference index, we can see the parameters which are being looked at. Okay, so the areas on which the scores were penned down as shown in our slide here. Okay. Really, these are areas of greatest vulnerability from the country point of view. So you can see here that we have had quite a high participation in policy development from the tobacco industry. I'm sure we know that the tobacco industry in Zambia has been involved at a lot of points. Latest, of course, was its involvement at the latest in internal legislation as we were preparing to take the bill into Parliament. And now they have blocked the bill from going to Parliament for the past 17 years. And we are happy to note that, Parliament has promised to take it onto the floor, but we are not yet there. The tobacco industry has had a lot of corporate social responsibility maneuvers in Zambia, a lot of activities. Then there have been a lot of benefits that have been given to the tobacco industry, especially those ones which have been setting up in the multi-facility economic zones. And now we have one which was set up in Kabwe, which is a district away from Lusaka, and yet it has been given the incentives by government even there. Then unnecessary interactions with officials, as we have already said. I think Mohee has given a lot of examples of how Zambian tobacco industry is interacting with our members of parliament and our chief politicians. And at the last conference, at the last opening of the tobacco manufacturing company, they actually invited the president himself to go and open that plant. However, the president delegated to one of the ministers, but to us, really, it was tobacco's influence that was being shown. Several drivers are key in this tobacco industry interference epidemic in our country. We have already talked about the engagement at policy, legal, and governance levels. But I think what is principal is that there's no comprehensive tobacco control law. And so they actually have a free rein on most of what they are doing. There's no ban on tobacco advertising, sponsorship, and corporate responsibility activities. There are no pictorial health warnings. Actually, in Zambia, their tobacco packets are still having a lot of misleading descriptors. Those descriptors saying light, mild, or low tar, and then a lot of adverts for menthol. Sale of single stick cigarettes, I think it's still legal in Zambia, but this is what is fueling tobacco use among the youths especially, because it has really made the cigarettes affordable. Tobacco companies do a lot of lobbying here, and I think these many structural gaps are what enable the routine industry to access government, to weaken health policies, and to continue to fuel the tobacco use epidemic in our nation. Next slide, please. So what are the policy gaps? Well, one, of course, is the issue of the tobacco industry having access to lobby and influence policy. And this is because of their non-compliance to Article 5.3. And we have really made representation at several stages to say, can the government please adhere to Article 5.3? Because the FCTC has already been signed out. And so we are expecting domestication at this level. There's also a lot of economic pressure. And this is because, the tobacco industry is still saying that, they are major employers in Zambia. They exaggerate their economic importance. And that, I think, must be put into its context. We also have a lot of legal and political threats, sometimes coming out to tobacco control advocates. And there are a lot of front groups, which are the major peddlers of misinformation, giving government the view that actually the tobacco in itself is bringing a lot of gains to the people of Zambia. And so they get farmers together. The Tobacco Association of Zambia has a lot of influence on our Ministry of Agriculture, showing that they are a very, very good crop and it bringing a lot of returns to the farmers. But also, the very fact that, the transparency laws are not really adhered to. And so the many meetings between government and the tobacco industry are not publicized. And so the tobacco industry continues to access their offices, call them to meetings, and actually give them documents which the government believes are actually national policy documents. There's a lot of image laundering. Again, I think here we are talking of corporate social responsibility. Mohee has given several examples of what these guys are doing, including, painting schools, and even on those schools, putting their logos there, showing them that actually the tobacco industry is being helpful. There's a lot of borehole digging here, trying to provide water to communities and things like that. And the tobacco industry has really targeted the youths. And because of the ban on advertising not being there, there's a lot of adverts now for vaping and e-cigarette use. And I think we have already said about the unnecessary interactions with government at different levels. But really, our friends have done a good job in putting all these findings together to indicate that we still have a lot of tobacco industry interference in our nation. Well, as we said, the FCTC was ratified in 2008. That's 17, if not soon it will be 18 years ago. But up to now, we really don't have a tobacco control law. At most of the times, the tobacco industry has visibly interfered in the process of legislation making. And so the bill has stalled, sent back for multiple consultations, and there's just been a merry-go-round. This time, I think we have all the hope that it's going to go through into Parliament. Next slide, please. Yeah, so examples of tobacco industry interference. We have talked here of how the tobacco industry is exaggerating its economic benefits to the country. The tobacco industry has actually actively lobbied for removal of excise duty or to keep it at a minimum, and they are managing to do that. And last year, the government said they had increased the duty on tobacco, but this year, we've just gone round, no tobacco product has changed its price. When we ask the retailers why, they are saying, well, the excise duty has meant nothing to them. It has not made them to adjust their prices at all. They don't care about it. Okay?
Sorry, Dr. Goma, we're out of time.
Oh, 1 minute. I would really want Dr. Sichone to go through the next slide, which is our recommendations.
Okay, Dr. Sichone, I give you 2 minutes. Dr. Sichone, please.
Oh, thank you. I didn't unmute myself. In terms of the policy implementation challenges, we have delays in the passage of the tobacco control bill, but we are happy to mention that this sitting, which starts on 3rd February, the bill will be tabled in Parliament. Then we have tobacco tax policies, which were earlier alluded to. And then we have we still have that interference from the industry by engaging some of the government officials and in what they are calling CSR interventions to promote the interests of the industry. Next. Is there another slide?
Yes, please.
Opportunities for strengthening Article 5.3. We are looking forward to enacting of the Tobacco Control Products Bill and then ban on tobacco advertising, sponsorship, and prohibition of CSR activities by the tobacco industry. And then develop and adopt a code of conduct for all public officials to limit interactions. Then raise public awareness and then strengthen civil society monitoring and advocacy on the industry interference. The civil society has proved to be very effective in the area of advocacy. And then we want to institutionalize the Article 5.3 safeguards, including limit government interactions with tobacco industry, mandatory transparency and disclosure requirements, and then conflict of interest rules for public officials. At the last COP, we saw a terrible interference from the industry and the Ministry of Agriculture in the deliberations, and it really painted a bad picture of Zambia. Is that the last slide?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Now we move over to Ethiopia. So we picked Zambia because it has high interference. We now want to look at a country where the interference is lower and see what we can learn. I would like to welcome Mr. Aklilu to share with us the Ethiopian experience.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, my camera is not functioning and I have a hoarse voice because I had flu the last few days. In the tobacco industry interference index, Ethiopia has moved steadily upward. As you can see from the slide, the score was 49 in 2021, and it improved to 42 in 2023. And by now, in 2025, it is 35. And this rank is 6 globally from among 100 countries included in the Tobacco Interference Index. And it is one of the best ranks in Africa next to Botswana. So this is not just a number, it reflects deliberate choices to prioritize public health over industry interference. Now, why does this matter? Because it shows
Sorry, Mr. Aklilu, have we lost you?
I think, yeah, the network.
Between 2021 and 2025. They prove that progress is possible when government act with courage and clarity. I'll go to the factors that contributed to this success. The first one is a strong legal safeguard. Ethiopia has one of the most comprehensive and strong legal framework on tobacco control and recognized by WHO. Proclamation 1112, 2020, 2019 makes it crystal clear that the tobacco industry has no place in policy making. Ministers, parliament have stood firm, keeping industry voices out of the drafting process. The lesson here is simple. When the law is clear, interference has nowhere to hide. And I ask you, how many of our countries have airtight laws that leave no room for manipulation? This is a challenge before us. And our index has improved mainly because we have established and enforced a strong tobacco control law. The second success factor is a firm ban on CSR activities. Ethiopia fully outlawed tobacco industry donations and sponsorship. For example, when Japan tobacco industry tried to build a hall in HDAMA, one of administrative regions in Ethiopia, authorities, the Ethiopian Food and Drug Authority, automatically shut it down immediately and is not functioning by now. Why? Because every so-called CSR project is a Trojan horse. It looks generous, but designed to buy legitimacy. And let's be honest. How many times have we seen industry to win hearts with donations while their products destroy lives? Ethiopia's response shows us that vigilance works. Next slide, please. The next factor that contributes to our progress is transparency and accountability. Transparency is our shield. Ethiopian Food and Drug Authority and the National Tobacco Control Steering Committee records every interaction with the industry. Draft codes of conduct, when we conduct this interference index, it was drafted. By now it's finalized and signed among the signing parties, and workshops kept officials alert. The lesson is clear here. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. When interactions are documented, hidden lobbying loses power. And I ask you all, what would happen if every ministry in Africa kept a public record of industry contacts? Imagine the trust that will build. And another factor is preventing conflict of interest. As I have from the previous presentations, there is a conflict of interest, and also there are benefits that are granted to the industry. Ethiopia fully prohibits officials from holding positions or consultancy roles in the tobacco industry. The research that we have conducted has shown us no official has held any position in the tobacco industry since privatization. The revolving door is closed in Ethiopia. Public servants serve the people, but not the industry. This is a lesson for all of us. Integrity must be protected by rules and not just by goodwill. And proactive enforcement and awareness measures has also a great contribution to protect industry interference on public health. Ethiopia Food and Drug Authority integrates WHO FCTC Article 5.3 into awareness programs for senior officials and civil society organizations like the organizations that I am working for. We have translated FCTC 5.3 into the local language, and we ensure its access to vulnerable ministerial officials to raise their awareness. And violations occur, whether gift or contribution, disciplinary actions follows. This is how vigilance sustains progress, and awareness plus enforcement equals resilience. Think of this way. Training keeps officials honest, and enforcement keeps the systems honest. Together they build resilience. The next presentation will be presented by my colleague Bitsat from EFDA. Thank you so much.
Bitsat, please continue.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Bitsat Shimeles, and I work on tobacco control and regulatory enforcement. Thank you for the opportunity to share Ethiopian experience on the 2025 Tobacco Industry Interference Index. When you see this slide, examples of tobacco industry interference, this is the tobacco industry interference mainly in two ways. The first is distinguish the corporate social responsibility as community development and funding project or donation to gain goodwilling. The authority counters this by enforcing strictly bans on sponsorship, monitoring local project, and penalizing the CSR. And the second is they exploit regulatory loops, pressuring government to delay health warning, for example, health warning and tax adjustment. This weakness tobacco control and regulatory respond by tightening laws and closing loops and enforcing strictly timeline for warning and the tax increase. And the industry uses descriptive tactics, but strong enforcement and proactive regulatory measures are protect public health and sustain sustain progress. Next slide. This slide highlights two more examples of industry interference. The first one is monopolized and privatization deals. When companies like GTI secure long-term exclusive rights, they gain structural leverage over policies. This limits government flexibility and risk prioritize economic interest over public health. When you see this, the government of Ethiopia and the regulatory responds by reviewing contracts and avoiding long-term monopolizing and ensuring competition policy protect health priorities. The second one is unnecessary interaction with non-health sector. When you see this, the industry tries to engage with, for example, custom, finance, and the city development initiative. This creates policy incoherence and can legitimate their presence outside health, and the authority counters this by enforcing Article 5.3 of the WTO, restricting interaction to only what is strictly necessary and training non-health institutions to avoid legitimizing industry interference. Monopoly deals and cross-sectoral interaction strengthens industry power, but government can resist by closing structural gaps and limiting engagement and keeping health at the center of all policy decision. Next slide, please. When you see the transparency gaps in looping, well, EFDA documented in interaction with the tobacco industry and other ministries like finance still engage without health sector oversight because there is no public registry for lobbyists and the interaction remain invisible. And hidden lobbying indoors accountability lets industry shapes fiscal and trade policies, undermines public confidence in the governance. The authority can strengthen transparency by curing all ministry to document interaction, establishing a public registry of lobbyists, and ensuring health sector oversight whenever the industry engages with the government. These measures close the gaps and protect policy integrity. Next slide, please. Steps needed to reinforce regulatory protection. When you see in Ethiopian legal framework are essential, they limit industry influence and give government clear authority, and CSR ban must be enforced vigilant so distinct donation or project don't undermine public, and monopoly structure those long term. So regulators need to avoid exclusive deals that industry power. And when you see transparency gaps, weaken accountability, so government should require full documentation of interaction and establish public registries for lobbyists and prevent measure to do, but they need to institutionalize, meaning build to system and practice across all ministries, not just health. And strong laws, strict enforcement, transparency, and institutionalized are safeguards are the backbone of resilience tobacco control. This slide focuses on the deeper long reinforce needed to protect tobacco control industry interference. First, in shrining Article 5.3 into binding national law ensures that protect against tobacco industry is permanent. And the second one is whole government code of conduct and independent oversight mechanism make accountability and stronger. The third one is transparency and disclosure laws, along with interministerial coordination, prevent hidden lobbying and policy incoherence. And we also need to inform conflict of interest rules, secure sustainability and independent financing, and build institutionalized capacity through continuous training. And finally, civil society and academic engagement must be formalized, and compliance with Article 5.3 should be integrated into national development frameworks. These reforms embed tobacco control into the legal, financial, and institutional fabric of government, making protection, resilience, and sustainability. When you see, next slide, please. When you see how regional cooperation and strengthen tobacco control, first by expanding monitoring networks and holding regional workshops, countries can share experience and build joint capacity. And the second one, crosses country policy harmonization and shared legal support help close loops and prevents the industry from exploiting difference between nations. Third, advocacy platforms, coalition, and joint communication campaign amplifying the public health message across borders. Finally, collaborative research data platforms and cooperation ensures that knowledge and resources are pooled, making every country stronger. Regional collaboration creates unity, consistency, and collective strengths against tobacco industry. Ethiopia achieved strong due to clear legal measures, transparency, engagement rules, and institutional coordination. Continued implementation of Article 5.3 remains essential to protect public health policy from industry influence. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Welcome question and further discussion.
Thank you very much, all our panelists. We'll now go into a session of questions and answers. And so I will stop sharing. And I want to check whether there are any questions. So I can see 2 in the chat. The first is to Mr. Sichone. When is the tobacco control bill going to go to Parliament? Mr. Sichone? You're muted. Please unmute.
Okay, thank you very much. It is going to the current sitting, which starts on Tuesday, 3rd February. And we've just received a letter to introduce the tobacco bill on the agenda. So we've been given up to 30th to write the introductory remarks for the introduction of the bill in Parliament. So we are very positive because it's now definitely on the agenda. Thank you.
Maybe a follow-up question, because there are people outside of Zambia on this call. What support can the rest of us give you?
Come again?
What support can people outside Gambia give you as you lobby for your legislation? Is there any support we can give?
Yes, definitely. Mostly is advocacy, because the industry is doing a lot of misinformation. So we need a lot of advocacy with the MPs who will be legislating, that is the legislature, and also ensuring that we counter the misinformation. And then there are 2 aspects that have been omitted from the current bill. We are trying to see how we can incorporate it. The whole government approach hasn't been incorporated. The bill has been drafted in such a way that they are saying only Ministry of Health. But from the presentation you've just had, it's not possible to leave the fight against tobacco to the Ministry of Health alone. Then the other area is to do with the taxes and excise duty. And then the third area is the ensuring that we have a tobacco control fund. These areas have deliberately been omitted, so we need support from other stakeholders to help us on how best we can ensure that these aspects are incorporated in the new tobacco control law. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sichone. If I could switch to Ethiopia, I have 2 questions for you. So starting first with the intersectoral or multisectoral coordination that has proved problematic in Zambia. From the case of Ethiopia, you've also mentioned that outside the health sector, Article 5.3 is still a bit difficult. And so how can we improve Article 5.3 compliance outside the Ministry of Health or the EFDA? Bitsat or Aklilu can answer that.
So, yeah, outside the ministry, the first thing is to, to increase awareness among government officials working outside the Ministry of Health, and then to hold them accountable for when they are when we don't respect the Article 5.3. That's what has been done before, and we keep raising awareness. Officials outside the health sectors, particularly, this is observed in the Ministry of Finance. And then the civil society organization, we have in Ethiopia a strong civil society organization coalition working hand in hand with FDA. We'll keep advocating and we'll keep informing them that this issue is a public health issue. And then the government is as a whole committed to enforce the law, and ensuring them accountable is the next step.
Bitsat, do you want to add anything on what efforts EFDA makes to engage non-health sectors?
Yes, thank you. The strengthen multi-sectoral coordination is established a high-level national tobacco coordination committee with respect from trade, finance, customs, education, and enforcement, local government. The outside to for tobacco control, for example, the like customs is to regulate, to collaborate when in illicit tobacco product. This is the very important ministries outside Ministry of Health, so we can collaborate in the with tobacco control enforcement and other activities like finance and trade is most important in Ethiopia to monitor or to enforce tobacco control. So this is one of the Ethiopia's achieving to collaborate with Ministry of Health. So this is a very important one of the very important activity. Zambia also can implement on this. This is a very important achievement.
All right. My next question is to Deowan. At a regional level, because ATCA is a regional alliance, what activities can we do either to collaborate or to partner so that we strengthen monitoring and countering of industry interference? Are there any regional bodies that we can engage? And then the second question is, only 20 countries are doing the industry interference index. How can ATCA help the other countries to also do the index? Deowan, you're muted.
It's okay now?
Yes, go ahead.
Participation, increasing the number of countries to get involved in the tobacco industry interference index depends on the budget which is available, but also on the preparedness of countries. So regarding the first point, the budget, GGTC receives a budget for this activity. And this is a global initiative. It is not a something which is done only in Africa. 100 countries are concerned. And which means that the budget has to be distributed among all these countries. The more budget you get, the more countries you can get involved. And this is being done on a regular basis. Every year, the number of countries at global level is increasing as well as in Africa. Compared to 223, we have reached now, it was 18, now we have reached 20. And most probably in the years to come, there will be more countries that will be joining. The next one is supposed to take place in 2 years, 25, 26, so 27. So I'm confident that more fund will be available in order to increase the number of countries in Africa. But also, it also depends upon building the capacity. It's not only conducting, getting the data, but preparing the country partners to conduct the survey in a very systematic, scientific way. This is very important. So conducting the report, it is always accompanied by capacity building, and this also requires funding. But I'm confident that in the years to come, we shall have more, so that the index become more representative of what is happening in Africa regarding tobacco industry interference. Regarding the tobacco industry monitoring, you mean monitoring the tobacco industry? Oh, I didn't get it properly, Russell.
I was asking what regional forums we can engage to counter industry interference.
Okay, if you look at the latest developments in Africa, last year we had quite a number of meetings with regional bodies. The African Union, Africa CDC, ACBF, and some regional bodies. We met on a number of occasions and we discussed tobacco control. Let's say that it has not always been possible to engage these regional bodies in the debate on tobacco control. And it's coming. It happened last year, and there has been strong commitment on the part of Africa CDC and the African Union to get more actively engaged in tobacco control. And the work is ongoing. And I'm sure that this component of tobacco control, I mean tobacco industry monitoring, will be part of the broad agenda which is being worked out by all the partners, including civil society, with regard to tobacco industry interference.
Thank you very much. We are at the end of our webinar now. I would like to thank all our panelists for taking the time to prepare and to share with us. I hope we have learned a thing or two. What stood out for me was the need to legislate Article 5.3, because that is what has helped Ethiopia. It's codified into the law. And then secondly is the element of creating awareness about Article 5.3 beyond the health sector, and so engaging the other ministries and departments where the tobacco industry is very active. In terms of next steps, we will be sharing the slides from this presentation with the emails that registered for this webinar. And we urge you to look out for announcement of our next webinar. And then lastly, for more information on the Tobacco Control Data Initiative, please check our country dashboards for Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, DRC, Ethiopia, and we have a new dashboard that will be coming up in Senegal. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I wish you a good rest of your day. Have a good day.